welcome to Bonus Excel Tips. My name is Neale Blackwood, and today we're going to look at 4 separate tips for Excel. The first one is how we can avoid the NA error when it comes to leading and trailing spaces. So we'll start with that one. Then we'll have a look at how you can count non-blank cells. Then we can see how to line up charts perfectly so that they look professional. And finally, we'll look at how we can print all of the sheets in a file in one step. Okay, VLOOKUP. After the sum function, I think VLOOKUP is one of the most popular functions used. Accountants tend to love it. VLOOKUP these days is a bit redundant because the XLOOKUP function, if you have the latest version of Excel, XLOOKUP has taken over from VLOOKUP. It's a lot more flexible. What I'm going to show you today actually applies to XLOOKUP as well. When you're importing data from other systems, so we've got a little table on the left hand side here, sometimes you will get codes coming in that have been what's called padded, which means they've had a space added to the end, which this one does, or a space added to the front, which this one has. And what that does is it stops you being able to look that code up because the space makes the code different. And so when you try to look up the code without the space, then you get the NA error. And so what I'm going to show you is a quick way to fix that. So it might seem problematic, but it's been around for a long time, and there's a way to do it, way to fix it with the trim function. So equals trim. So basically you just use another column, refer to the cell, then we can copy down. Quick way to copy down is to double click the fill handle, which I'm pointing to at the moment, double click that, and that will copy down the range. And then we can copy that whole range and right click and just paste values. And that fixes it. So as you can see, the VLOOKUP, the NAs have gone there, and then we can just get rid of the values and we're back to normal. Now, if you're using Power Query, well done. In Power Query, there is a built-in way to do trimming. So when you're importing data using Power Query, you can automate that trimming operation, and it just becomes a step within the Power Query. Okay, so let's now look at how we can count blanks. So what I've got on the left-hand side here is 5 cells with varying things in them. So the first cell is totally blank, it's empty, there's nothing in it. The second cell, as you can see, has a formula in it. By the way, the formula is shown in column B, and that was also here. There's a function called formula text, and that's showing what the formula is, in this case, in column E, and I'm doing the same thing here. So you can see what the formula is. This one's displaying a 0. This one is displaying what's a blank. So when you use 2 quotation marks together, it looks like a blank cell. This cell and these 2 cells here have a format applied to them, and that format stops them from displaying. So these aren't blank, but they look blank. So I don't want to count these 3 cells. I only want to count these 2. So a blank cell and a cell that looks blank because it's got a formula in it that returns a blank cell. So they're the 2 I want to count. But let's see how we can count empty cells. We'll start with that. So we can use the sum product function to do the calculation. We can use isBlank. Now isBlank returns true if a cell is blank. Otherwise it returns false. Now, when we multiply by 1, we convert all of those trues and falses into a 1 or a 0. And then the sum product just adds that up. So at the moment, there's only 1 empty cell there. So if I go here and just delete this, you'll see that that changes to a 2. So I can undo that. Oh, and if you've got the latest version of Excel, you don't need to use sum product. Sum product works in all versions. If you've got the latest version, you can just use the sum function to do that same calculation. Okay, so the opposite of empty cells is non-empty cells, and you can use sum product and the not function. So when you wrap the not function around the isBlank, it turns the trues into falses and the falses into true. So it basically gives you the opposite. And again, multiply by 1. And so these are mutually exclusive. So 1 plus 4 equals the 5 cells that are there. Now, blank cells, funnily enough, have their own count function. You can count blank, and that includes cells that are displaying a blank through a formula, which is really cool. It makes it a lot easier. So count blank. Non-blanks, I'm still going to use the sum product here. So we're going to use the A2 to A6, the range not equal to. So when you use the less than symbol followed by the greater than symbol, that means not equal to. So this means not equal to blank, which is non-blank. And again, we multiply the trues and the falses by 1, and then sum product adds them up. And again, if you've got the latest version, you can just use the sum function with that same structure. Okay, so that's empty cells, blank cells, how you count them using sum product, count blank, and if you're lucky, the sum function. When you're building dashboards and reports, it's often really important to get your charts looking professional and to line them up. We're pretty good at spotting when things aren't lined up. And so what I thought I'd show you is how you can, there's 2 techniques to line up charts really quickly. One of them involves the keyboard and the other one involves a setting I'll show you. So I'll show you the keyboard shortcut. Now, if I drag something around, I drag this chart around, I can sort of line this up fairly well. It's a bit fiddly, but we can sort of get there. But have a look what happens now. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, so I'm going to start to drag. Now I'm going to hold the Alt key down, and look what happens when I start to drag. It jumps. It's called snaps to. And so it gets there really quickly and easily. So you can select another chart and do it. And so you can just drag the chart around and it will snap to the grid lines, the underlying grid lines there. And there we go. That one didn't, there we go. That's it. And so that lines up pretty much perfectly with the grid lines that are underneath. So that's the Alt key. So you hold the Alt key while you move the chart around. Okay, another way to do it, so let's make these a bit more random, is to, if you want to line up the top, say, what you can do is hold the Control key and click on 2 charts. So I've selected these 2 charts. When you do, you'll get a shape format. If you're in an older version of Excel, it'll just say Format. And this ribbon has an Align drop down, and you can align top. And so then you can move them around as well. If you hold the Alt key down, you can then do the snaps to bit as well. And then we can do the same here. We can just select these with the Control and then align top. And then again, hold the Alt key and then just sort of move them around. Let's move that one. These 2 have a different gap, so we can maybe move this over. And let's say we want to align these 2. So what we can do is, let's get this one to the top, to there. If you hold the Control key, select both shapes, and again there's an Align left. And so you can align them up perfectly. And that way the charts are lined up to the grid line and to each other. So it looks a little bit more professional. There's also an ability. I'm going to select all 4 charts. On that shape format ribbon, on the far right of it, you can change the size. So I've got these at 8 centimeters, but let's say I wanted to drop the size down, so I can say 7 and let's say 12. So that's resizing all of the charts in one go. Again, if you've got charts in the same section, having them the same size sort of looks good. So that's an easy way to do it. So you can use the Control key to select them, and then that sizing section on the far right to make them all exactly the same size. Okay, now finishing off these tips with how you can print all of the sheets in one go. So what you can do is on the sheet tabs down the bottom, if you right click one of them, there is select all sheets. And then if you hit the print button, I'm not going to, but if I did, that would print all of the sheets from left to right, basically. So that's the easy way to click it. Now, that's so easy, but it comes with a warning. Don't leave the file like this. This is very dangerous, and I'll show you why. So let's scroll over here, and let's say I go to S, and let's say I type in test. Now, because all of these three sheets are selected, I have just typed in test to every single sheet. So what you need to do is ungroup them. So I'm going to ungroup them now, but that hasn't fixed the damage that I've done. If I go here and scroll over, there we go, S1, and go over here, there's S1, test. So when you use that grouping technique, always make sure you ungroup them. Now, there is another way to do it. You can just, let's say I insert some other sheets here. If you want to select the sheets to print, you just hold your control key down and select them. And so when I hit print now, it's only going to print these three selected sheets. Now, when you've got selections like this, it's really easy to ungroup them. You just select one of the other sheets. But when you use select all sheets, you have to right click one of the sheets and choose ungroup. That's really, really important. If I save the file like this, what it means is when the next person opens it, it might not be you, they start typing or start doing something, they're going to affect every single sheet in the file, which can be pretty dangerous. Now, there's not much warning. The only difference between this and normal Excel is that all of these sheets are the same color, and there's the word group in the title. They are not in your face, so it's very easy to not notice that and to inadvertently make some big errors. So always, always, always ungroup your sheets and then save it. Never ever save the file when you've got grouped sheets. Okay, so that was 4 tips to do with Excel, how we can use the trim function to get rid of leading and trailing spaces, counting non-blanks and empties and those type of cells, how we lined up our charts, and finishing off with how we can print a lot of sheets in one go. I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching.